Okay, we can pull up the presentation.
Yeah, just one. Yes, we are live on YouTube.
Fantastic. Sahana, you wanted to say something?
No, I was just saying hi to a couple of people.
Do I start the screen share?
Yes, please. Wonderful. Good evening, everyone. I'm Meghna, and on behalf of the Wiki Karnataka Yoga Council, I would like to welcome you all to the second episode of our speaker series today. We will be in conversation with our guest, Sahana Ravindranath. Today, we will explore the subjects of Vedanta and Ayurveda as yoga teachers and practitioners, understand how to integrate these tools into our daily lives. And for those of you coming across these subjects for the first time, we will set context on the what, why, and how of these disciplines and where to learn more, so do stay tuned. In the end, we will open the session up to the audience for a Q&A with Sahana, and time permitting, we will conclude with a Vedantic meditation, so do stick around. Let me kick off by sharing a little bit about Wiki and what our goals are, vision, mission, and past projects are. If we can go to the next slide. And the next slide, please. Thank you. So the Women's Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry is a premier national business chamber for women, envisioning global impact for women entrepreneurs, businesswomen, and professionals from all walks of life. It is under the umbrella of the Federation, FICCI, and the goal is to increase the representation of women in many sectors, specifically to encourage and empower women in business, industry, and commerce across sectors and fields, and to drive fundamental changes in government policies, laws, incentives, and entrepreneurial ecosystems. The Karnataka Yoga Council was founded on the 21st of June by Lubina Rangal. We've done many past projects, including Yoga Samvad, a conversation on women, wellness, and yoga, Parishraya, a gathering of women yoga teachers across Karnataka, a video series about the business of yoga, newsletters, Yogini Awards, and the likes. I'd like to encourage everyone present here to follow us on social media. Our channels are up on the next slide. If you live in Karnataka or Goa and are involved in the field of yoga and are interested in joining the Wiki Karnataka Yoga Council, please feel free to reach out to any of us, as we do have openings for council members. Can we go to the next slide, please? Next one. And the next one. Thank you. So we're joined here today by our council president, Soumya Iyer. Soumya has been the president of the Wiki Karnataka Yoga Council since 2024. She's a practitioner scholar currently working at the Malaviya Center for Peace and Peace Research at Banaras Hindu University, focusing on the contributions and impact of spiritual women sanghas on peace building and diplomacy. Soumya is also the director of Praful Urja Charitable Foundation. Thank you so much for being with us today, Soumya. And now I'd like to introduce our guest speaker for today, Sahana Ravindranath. Sahana is the founder, yoga teacher, executive coach, systemic team coach, and self-management consultant at Antaryan. She's a 500-hour yoga teacher from Shivanand Ashram, 200 hours Yoga Nidra teacher from Shankar Prasad Foundation, and QCI Level 2 certified from Ayush India. She describes herself as a diligent student of Vedanta and primary studies Yoga Vashishta under the guidance of a teacher. Her approach to yoga is to practice it in conjunction with Vedanta and Ayurveda. She sees them as three systems that are interconnected for well-being and spiritual growth. She conducts regular yoga programs for publics and corporates. She has previously taught yoga to under-resourced communities, such as in remand homes and children's homes, special needs communities, and also cancer communities, especially children with cancer at the Kidwai Hospital. With her education background in psychology and a rich corporate experience in coaching and consulting, she seamlessly blends Western psychology and Eastern yoga and Vedanta to support her clients in her profession as an executive and organizational coach. Thank you so much, Sahana, for your time today. We are delighted to have you with us. Today, we have in this room not just people who've been practicing yoga for a long time, but also people who've just started their yoga journey, right? And even amongst yoga teachers, people have different levels of exposure to concepts of Vedanta and Ayurveda. So we'd like to hear from your experience today. What is Vedanta? Why Vedanta? What is Ayurveda? How do we go about integrating all of this into our lives? Over to you.
Thank you, Meghna, for that lovely introduction. I'm happy to be here with Vicky Karnataka. Let me share my screen. I'll start with the why. Since there's a mixed crowd here, I just want to say upfront that I'm still a student of Vedanta. So this is a yoga teacher's perspective as a student of Vedanta. And if there are things that come up which I may not know answers to, we'll take them and look back to you with answers later. I hope to give as many answers as I can. Okay, with that caveat, I'd like to start with the why. Especially in the recent times, India is a rich culture, which focused on spirituality from time immemorial. However, in the few decades that we are teaching and practicing yoga, the focus very much has been on a physical aspect of yoga and some mental aspects, right? People usually come to yoga when there's a crisis. Maybe there's a physical crisis, somebody's injured, or they have something else going on. Then they seek a yoga teacher. They want to improve their well-being in that aspect. Post-COVID, the mental crisis kind of blew up. We all know about it. And, people started to come to yoga for the mental aspects as well, the mental well-being. However, I see that there's a bigger crisis in the world today. There is a recent, study that says that 50% of Gen Z, which is anybody who was born after 98 to 2000s onwards, they have mental health issues. So here's a generation that needs yoga, never like before. And on top of that, I see that there is a bigger crisis, and it's not just me who sees it this way. This is something that's globally talked about. So at a global level, there's what is called as a meta crisis. We all know about climate change. The summer has been terrible in Bangalore. I don't know about other cities, which is, a symptom of what's happening globally. There's wars. There was a pandemic. There could be many more pandemics. There is economic instability. So instead of looking at all of these as individual crises, there's a term that is used globally, which is called a meta crisis, to look at all of these as interconnected, influencing each other, forming a larger umbrella of crisis, these being symptoms of that larger meta crisis. And to address each of those, we need to address it at the larger meta crisis level and not just look at climate change, what can we do, pandemic, what can we do, and so on. So that is at the global level. Now, at an individual level, let me just move my camera thing out of the way because sorry about that. Okay, I've stopped sharing. Do you still see my screen? You don't.
No, you have to reshare.
Yeah. There you go. I am not able to play mode for some reason. Hang on. Sorry about this technicality. I seem to have to move the camera out of the way. That's the only way for me to go into play mode.
I think maybe the Zoom controls are right on the top because after you screen share, we're able to see the play button. So
Oh,
you
are
can
able
just,
to-
yeah,
Okay.
you can just move the cursor on the controls and move it down
Right.
if that helps.
Hmm.
You can just drag and drop it down.
I moved it up because it was blocking my, yeah, never mind. I'll go with this. I can't see one side of my screen, but it's fine. I know what it is. So on an individual level, there's what is called as a meaning crisis. The meaning crisis arises because, we have this world currently, which is abundant, right? Never has there been a time in human history where food was so abundant. Of course, there is economic disparity still. People are still hungry in some parts of the world, but largely we have all the resources we need. The current generation are born into families that already own homes, already have a financial stability in the larger population. So there is a meaning crisis where people have started to ask who they are. They have success, they have the jobs, they have the money, they have the family setup they need, they have fame, whatever else they need, but they're not fulfilled. There's a search for meaning because of this lack of fulfillment. And I believe yoga teachers, I consider yoga teachers as healers, like therapists and other professionals, are well positioned in the current world, whereas this larger crisis at the global level and meaning crisis at the individual level, yoga teachers are positioned to address this. And to be able to address this, yoga teachers need to move beyond the physical aspects of the yoga practice and look at what I call as an integral system of yoga, Ayurveda, and Vedanta. Of course, Sri Aurobindo has written a larger philosophy on integral yoga. It is not this. This is just my perspective of how these two combine together to address the physical, mental, and spiritual well-being in the current world where there's this meaning crisis going on. And I believe if we address this meaning crisis at an individual level, the meta crisis will automatically get addressed because people change and they're able to come up with ideas to tackle the meta crisis. At the bottom of this integral system, I would place Ayurveda. I still believe Ayurveda is relevant, but it's not as big as what I would put at the top, right? Which is why I have Ayurveda at the bottom. Since all of us are yoga practitioners and teachers, I would guess that we know what the koshas are. So I will not explain that, but I'll just touch upon it. I believe that Ayurveda is, of course, it focuses on other koshas as well, but primarily focused on the Annamaya kosha. There are certain practices within Ayurvedic system, which I'll talk about in the coming slides, as well as there are certain practices in yogic system like asanas that address the Annamaya kosha, which is where often the well-being stops at, not always, but often. Then if we go into the next level, which needs to be addressed, I would put yoga here, which addresses primarily the Manomaya and Pranamaya. Of course, there are aspects of other koshas that get addressed through yoga. And as I said, Ayurveda also through certain rituals, through massages, addresses the Manomaya and Pranamaya koshas. But nevertheless, largely yoga's focus is here. And I want to put Vedanta on top because I believe that to look at holistic well-being at all levels, Vedanta is key and it's the biggest component of it, which addresses the koshas beyond the lower three, the Vijnanamaya kosha. I've put some practices in the brackets, which I'll talk about later. So don't worry about if you don't understand these meaning, the words, don't worry about it. We'll talk about it. The reason why we are addressing our well-being ultimately, yoga also through Patanjali's Yoga Sutras has a system to address these koshas, right, in a different way. Why Vedanta on the top? I believe the goal is the same. The goal of Vedanta is moksha, and the goal of yoga, as Patanjali has described, is Kaivalya Samadhi. I believe when we integrate it, we are going to reach the same goal. However, we are going to do it in a manner which serves us because we are embodied beings at the end of the day. we don't experience, we experience these koshas, but we are not as much as in touch with these koshas as we are with the physical aspects and the mental aspects, Annamaya and the Manomaya. So my proposition to yoga teachers is to look at these three systems in conjunction while they practice and teach yoga, to be able to go beyond the koshas. I put deep sleep here in Anandamaya kosha simply because the causal aspects of who we are, which is what gives us certain preferences in life. And I'll talk about what I mean by preferences called vasanas in the coming slides. Even there, we are not there at the real essence of who we are. It's still the embodiment. So to go beyond this embodiment, we need to strive for moksha. And this is what our shastras say. And this is what all the sages and saints have been saying from time immemorial, because the human condition in the embodied state, there is something that is lacking, which is what makes us look or search for meaning, which is also what makes us feel like we're suffering. When things don't go our way, we feel like we're suffering. It's not a joyride anymore, right? To be able to go beyond that is why Vedanta has always been relevant. And I say that it's relevant now much more publicly in that sense. We don't need to go into forests like the sages to seek who we are truly. We could do that here, and we have to do that here wherever we are in whatever setup we are in, because we are called to do this with the meta crisis and the meaning crisis that is going on. Okay, so that's my the why and the proposition. Now let's talk about a little bit about I personally I like studying science. I like studying Vedanta, and I see a resemblance or a relevance in explaining through the lens of both the science and Vedanta some of the concepts of Vedanta. So which is why I'll talk about that first. That is the what of the Vedanta, then how to integrate after that. So the first concept that I want to talk about, quantum physics says that at a fundamental level, the universe is interconnected. You can see this, it's ChatGPT's creation, but the world is a web, the universe is a web, right? So at a fundamental level, everything is interconnected and interdependent. This is what quantum physics has found out. Now, this knowledge was always there in Vedanta, where we see the whole universe as Brahman, not just the universe that we are aware of, but the many universes that may exist are made up of what is called as Brahman. And what is Brahman? Bra means to expand. The one that is ever expanding is Brahman. Simply put, for someone who can't understand if they find it too abstract, simply put, it is awareness. When you close your eyes and check in with yourself, who is it who is aware of this? Whatever that you're experiencing, who is aware of your life, who is aware of what's going on? That awareness is Brahman. It also has another name called Chit. Chit simply means consciousness or awareness. And there's a term all yoga teachers, especially yoga nidra teachers, use called Chidakasha, Chit plus Akasha, Chidakasha, which is the expanse of Brahman. Everything that Brahman can imagine is in this Chidakasha expanse. Not expanse like a sky or a space. It's sort of a larger thing beyond that, because it encompasses everything. So that Chit or Brahman, that is the original essence of everything. Whether it's a tree, if you're looking outside your window right now, you may see a tree, that is also Brahman. If you have a pet right next to you, a cat or a dog, that is also Brahman. You who is listening to this conversation right now, you are also that, which is Brahman, the awareness of existence itself. That is the first concept. You will see that all these concepts interlink with each other, and hopefully it'll all make sense when I present all the concepts. So hold on if you're still feeling like, okay, what is she talking about? And we'll take in questions as well at the end. So the second concept is what is called as the observer effect in quantum physics. And in Vedanta, it's a seer, seeing, seen process. Some people say perceiver, perceiving, perceived process. Language, it's the same thing ultimately. So what is observer effect? Quantum physics has proved that when you observe particles, they behave differently than they would otherwise. Meaning, I'll take my favorite example of tree. If in Vedanta, if you're looking at a tree, that is the object that you're seeing, right? That is seen. You are the seer. The act of seeing, that is seeing. Vedanta says that the seer seeing seen is a bundle. It doesn't exist. We perceive this world as a matter, right? A world made up of matter. Meaning, I, as this body, exist. The tree, as the tree, it exists, and I'm seeing it. That is how we perceive the world. But what Vedanta says, it's a bundle, meaning it exists only when you see it, and it's encoupled with you. Meaning, if you are not seeing it, it doesn't exist, you don't exist. So basically, you experience life only when you're perceiving it along with whatever you're perceiving it. So if there's a room in your house which you've not seen right now because you're sitting in your study or living room or wherever, let's say your kitchen or your bedroom, it exists only in your memory. It's not in the physical space as we perceive it to be, right? That is what Vedanta says, and that is what also quantum physics has found out. When you don't observe the particles, they don't behave the same way as you would think they behave. As soon as you start observing them, they behave differently. That's the second concept. The third concept, quantum physics has found out that the world is both energy and matter. It's both wave and particle. So depending on the instrument of study, so if you use an instrument which studies waves, it comes as waves. If you use an instrument that studies particles, it comes out as particles. So what Vedanta says is that this world that we perceive, the tree, the dog, the cat, whatever else we are perceiving, including your own body, this is the duality. It looks like it exists physically in the matter, whereas the true essence, which is Brahman, which is eternal, unchanged, it is just awareness, pure consciousness. That is the reality. However, it seems to be like, because we are the instruments, right? This body is an instrument to experience and observe and perceive this, whatever we perceive, depending on what's your life story. So we are the instruments, just like, quantum instruments study, when they study, it looks like a wave, energy, it looks like a matter. Similarly, we experience through this instrument of body, this world which looks true and real, but fundamentally it is not. Fundamentally, what is real is just the awareness of the consciousness. The following concept is what is called as a quantum entanglement. So meaning two particles which may be separated, not just in space, but also in time, which seem like they're not connected with each other. When you make a change in one of the particle, the other particle also behaves differently based on the change you've made. So they are entangled beyond time and space. That is the quantum entanglement. So what Vedanta says that ultimately there's no separateness. There's no separateness between you and the tree or the dog or the cat, or you and your friend, or you and your family member. We are all the same. We are entangled in this manner because we are interconnected. So anything that happens in any part of the universe is bound to show in the entire universe, because ultimately Brahman is the same. And how beautiful is this? Looking at the meta crisis, right? Why should we care about what's happening in another part of the world, another part of country? Because we see it as separate. We see it, we are separate from it. But ultimately, we are not separate. Getting over the separateness is the crux of Vedanta. To overcome the separateness and realize that ultimately we are one, which is this awareness. The last concept, which will tie all of what I've said together, what quantum physics, following or what I said previously about the observer effect, what quantum physics has found out is when you're not observing, nothing exists. Everything is just a probable or a potential state. It comes into being only when you observe it. That is when the particles behave differently and something happens, some phenomenon happens, which is what Vedanta has been saying all along, that the manifested Brahman, it's always probable or a potential state. Only when we perceive it, when we see it, when we experience it, is when it comes into, as if it comes into existence, and then instantaneously, and then it's not there. So meaning it's impermanent. If you may have a rough day today, it's okay. It's impermanent. You may have an awesome day tomorrow. It's okay. It's impermanent. Ultimately, what is common between those 2 days is that you were aware of it. That, which is what the Brahman consciousness or awareness is. So these are some basic concepts that I wanted to introduce, tying, what quantum physics has proved and what Vedanta has been saying. Just want to touch upon a few more concepts which are used in the first slide so everybody understands those words, and then I'll talk about how to integrate Vedanta as yoga teachers. So I've covered Brahman and Chit. Atman, we all may have studied during our yoga TPCs or heard of at least the term Atman. In Vedanta, there's no Advaita Vedanta, there's no distinction between Brahman, Atman, and Chit. Ultimately, they all mean the same, which is the true nature, inner essence of who we are ultimately in these embodied experiences, which is the I awareness, not the I ego. The I, the one that experiences and is aware constantly of things, is Brahman, Atman, Chit. The other concept from Vedanta, which is relevant for us to integrate it into our practice, is called as Vairagya. We may all know the meaning, which means dispassion. Now, this dispassion is not that we should become sannyasis or sadhus, or we should go into forests and caves and, just cut off everything else. The true dispassion is actually internal dispassion. I love chocolate cakes. I'm sure all of us have our own likes and dislikes. But while we are enjoying it, not to feel like the happiness is coming purely from that and, getting lost in that so much so that we forget who we are truly. That is dispassion. So knowing internally that, yeah, I know it's giving me biologically some pleasure. It's all right. I'll enjoy it. There's nothing wrong in enjoying it, but I know that internally I'm unchanged. Just because I had it, it doesn't mean that, I become something else. So that is true dispassion. The reason why it becomes important in the practice is we have something called samskaras. Samskaras are mental impressions. Every time you like something or dislike something, there is an impression in your memory in this lifetime, which gets imprinted in a way. These are latent tendencies. Vedanta says that it could be not just limited to one lifetime, it could be across lifetimes as well. And we are driven by these tendencies, constantly. I like this, I don't like this, makes me afraid. Like, dislike, raga, dvesha, bhaya, fearful. This is how the human mind is constantly, running. When we practice the same samskara, which is inherent in us over and over again, it becomes a vasana. Vasanas in itself is not a bad thing, right? You could have vasanas that serve you well in the path of Vedanta, like wanting to study and understand more, seeking knowledge is a vasana. But it's a good vasana because it's going to help you in that. But if you have vasanas that don't serve you in your path, then they're not good. And one needs to be careful about not, doing the same behavior over and over again, because it strengthens that samskara. Even neuroscience says the same thing. You have neural pathways, which are like grooves in your brain. The more you do the same behavior, the stronger it gets. It becomes more reflexive and automatic. You don't even have to think twice, like, people who drive. Once you've been driving, you can just drive it without even thinking. You can switch gears. I'm not one of those drivers, but most drivers are like that, right? So that is vasanas. The other thing that I had on my first slide, which is important to talk about, is viveka. Viveka, as you know, the translation is discrimination. But what are we discriminating? Discriminating the real I versus the unreal I. What is the real I? The awareness in any moment. If you're enjoying the chocolate cake, the awareness that I'm enjoying it is the real I. The unreal I is, oh, I am this person who's like this, who has this kind of body, this kind of image, a name, whatever else, and I am enjoying it. That is the unreal I. So constantly discriminating who is the I there, whether you're upset, happy, sad, or whatever it is, who is the real I? Discriminating that is viveka. And the last one is vichara, which is inquiring, following. Viveka and vichara always go together. So when you discriminate, you also have to analyze who is the real I here, who is the self with the S capital. Is it me who is born to this family, who has this talent, skills, looks, so on, or is it the awareness, the real self? That is the practice of vichara. So how do we integrate all of this in yoga practice as teachers and as practitioners of yoga? Now, this is from my own experience. I have been, I would say, I'm still a beginner in this journey. Maybe there are things that I have with the grace of the divine as some vasanas or samskaras, maybe, perhaps. But even so, I still say I'm a beginner because this is a practice that one takes on forever. It's not something that I'll do today for 1 hour and then I'll forget about it. And 6 months later, I'll come back to it and I'll figure out, right? That's not what it is. So these practices, from my understanding and what I have learned from various teachers, first, if we talk about Vairagya, how do we develop this passion? Just the awareness of the Raga, Dvesha, Bhaya, which is what are our likes, what are our dislikes, what are we afraid of, what are our fears? One of my teachers, one of the teachers that I follow, Swami Hari Brahmendra Tirtha, that's his name, Brahmendra Nanda Tirtha. He's also Shivananda lineage. His teacher was Swami Shivananda's direct disciple. He has a little ashram in Rishikesh and he gives discourses because he's a scholar. He gives discourses in Vedanta. He has a simple practice, which is to list down your likes, dislikes, and fears. Once you become aware by listing down your likes, dislikes, and fears, you become aware of your own patterns. What are the patterns that I constantly run into? And once that awareness comes, then the next step is how do I overcome these patterns? So that is a simple way to practice Vairagya. The second practice of Viveka, once we have developed that dispassion of knowing what drives us, the likes, dislikes, and fears, is to apply that discrimination. Firstly, thinking from a long-term perspective, because all of us are very short-term thinkers, even more so in the current world, right? We don't think about what happens a few years down the line. It's about here and now. Everything in instant now, right? Social media, everything else. So application of Viveka is simply taking the long-term view of what is permanent and real. The awareness when you are a child of 10 years of age, for example, because most of us are not fully aware of who we are in a human cognitive sense till about the age of 7 or 8. So let's say when you were 10, you knew who you were, right? If somebody asked, who are you? You knew the awareness was there. Now you may be 25, 35, and if somebody asks you who you are, there is an awareness. What is common? Your body has changed, your life story has changed, you have a different job, you are not working at age of 10, obviously, it's all of that. Maybe the family composition has changed. What is common between then and now is the very fact that you are aware of who you are, right? That is the only thing. If you really sit down and think about it, that's the only thing that is common. Even your genes change constantly. There's epigenetics, which has been found out recently, that your genes express differently based on what's happening in your lifestyle and other things. So applying Viveka is applying this long-term thinking and not get caught up in the short-term thinking, simply put. The next one, application of Vichara, which is eventually to go down into awareness of who is the real I, right? As yoga teachers, we all practice asanas, pranayama, and meditation. So starting with the awareness of the body and the mind itself and teaching that, not just to do it like an exercise, often I hear, sadly, even now, people coming and saying, I want a good workout when I come for yoga session. Right? That is the focus for most people because they want to lose weight, they want to do whatever else, which is okay. But ultimately, the goal of yoga was not that, right? The goal of yoga is to improve or understand your own self better, starting with the gross body, which is your Annamaya Kosha. So observing, increasing awareness, body, mind, and eventually starting to look within and ask who is there inside. And one of my teachers, she would always say that, if you sit down and quiet your mind and ask yourself, who is there? She said, Yaru illa in Kannada, which is nobody is there. It's only the silence of awareness. That is all you will find. If you meditate and sit down and quiet your mind, that is what, even for a nanosecond, if you realize that, that that is the truth, because that is not a projection of your mind. It is what ultimately remains. So a good way to do that, I've already kind of gone into that, is a Vedantic meditation. There are teachers who teach this online. Swami Hari Brahmendra Nandan Tirtha, it's a long name, I can send a link to Wiki so they can share it with on their social, so for you to access it. He has uh, meditations and other discourses online on YouTube. He's still teaching classes. He's a great person, amazing scholar who can teach in many languages. So I recommend taking one of his classes or following his techniques. There's another Western person called Rupert Spira, Spira. His meditation meditations, he calls them yoga meditations, I think, are also available on YouTube. But they are really Vedantic meditations. It's really this self-inquiry process. So I also recommend, I practice those and I recommend that. Uh, Another practice is chanting from a Vedantic perspective. It is Vedantic chanting, chanting of the verses in Vedanta. I personally, I know that your last speaker was Shakta yoga person, right? I have been guided in that path. So I've been given certain mantras related to Madevi. So I chant that. And I believe that, when we truly with Shraddha, which I had in my first slide, with faith not in terms of, just doing rituals, but faith that really internally moves you. If you find your Ishtadevata, to me, it took a long time. Trust me, I didn't have that bhakti in me for many, many decades. It came eventually, but I found my Ishtadevata. When I found that, it was like finding something that you've been looking for forever. And I've been given a mantra. I do that chanting because I believe that Ishtadevatas are able to guide us in the spiritual path. The very purpose of, going into the devotional path is to advance in our spirituality, and they guide us when we truly, with Shraddha, uh, seek them through chanting. So that is why I recommend chanting. It could be both ways, either the Vedantic or the Bhakti perspective. And how you, as teachers, I highly recommend, even if you know only one thing, please share it with your students. It's okay if you don't know everything. It's okay if you know only two little things that you learned and you feel you feel like you should share it. Please go ahead and share it. And you must share it because I believe that people, for me, some of the teachings that I was told in 2019 are only making sense right now after so many years. Now it's like, oh, this is what she meant when she said that. So it takes a long while for that understanding and internalization to happen. So the sooner we start, the better it is both for ourselves. When we teach, we learn more, and as well as our students get an insight into the holistic well-being, not just the physical and the mental aspects. Lastly, this is a tough practice for me, but it's what I call as the non-duality practice, to drop the separateness, that I am separate from others, which often shows up as judgment, right? Oh, I like her, I don't like her. Oh, she was mean. I am afraid of this. We constantly do this. And just to be aware when it happens, recognizing it and dropping it, not holding on to it. Just dropping it, I believe, is the first step to reduce the separateness. So these are the practices. Oh, there's one more, sorry. Just to tie it all up, I invite all yoga teachers, if you're not already doing it, if you're doing it, great. Kudos to you. I'm happy that you're perhaps even beyond me. I appreciate that. Those who have not started yet, please, I invite you to go beyond the physical aspects and the mental aspects in your yoga practice and teaching, and start to integrate it. Maybe you'll start with just the koshas in the beginning, just to explain that embodiment, which is okay. Start wherever you can, do whatever you can. And your Istadevata will guide you, your divinity, the Brahman will guide all of us. So that's the practices. When it comes to study, because it's important to also study the Shastras, because our Shastras say, of course, like Yamas and Niyamas, we also have, along with Vairagya, Viveka, Vichara, we have Shat Sampati in Gnana Yoga. One can look it up. They map quite well to Yamas and Niyamas in many ways, or other limbs of Ashtanga Yoga. But the key message of Vedanta is that we need to study the Shastras. And only then we are able to understand and experience it. Understanding is one intellectually, but experiencing it is knowing it subjectively in this embodied form. So to enable that, Vedanta talks about Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. Shravana is listening. I grew up in Karnataka. I'm a Kannadiga. When we were young, I'm 80s born. When we were young, during my school days, we would watch the performances during Ramanavami and other festivals, which was always mythology oriented, right? The Purana oriented stories. So that is Shravana. So we've grown up with that, Harikate and all of this. So we need to go back to that. Maybe the newer generation perhaps is a little cut off from that. So start first listening, including the discourses on Bhagavad Gita and Puranas, and Satsanga. Satsanga is being with the um, right company. The right company is not their credentials. The right company is someone who is already in the path and someone perhaps who's progressed a little bit. And you need to apply your own viveka, discrimination, and find out who that is, right? It's not, there are n number of gurus and teachers. So make that discrimination for yourselves and find someone who you feel you resonate with, who you can trust, and start the satsanga in their presence. That's a way to practice Shravana. The next one is Manana, which is to memorize and remember. So this is where, in the past, culturally in India, Vedas were taught like this. So I would recommend all the participants here, if you're not doing it already, to start studying some basic scriptures. Upanishads also come in Manana, but Upanishads can be tough for those who don't know Sanskrit and those who can't read Devanagari. A lot of us are not used to, as a Kannadiga, I learned Devanagari in school, but I had to relearn it again because it's not my script. So till you get there, you could always do it in parallel, of course. You can start with simpler texts that Adi Shankaracharya has, Tattva Bodha, Atma Bodha, and Swami Hari Brahmendra Nanda Tirtha has courses on it online, even the Brahma Sutras, even Bhagavad Gita. So start with these simpler texts. You can take up Upanishads in parallel. And then the last stage is Nididhyasana. Once you've done Shravana Manana, continuously contemplating Nidhi always on the reality is Nididhyasana. There are advanced texts which are recommended, which is Avaduta Gita, Ashtavakra Gita, Yoga Vashishta, Tripura Rahasya. I was by chance pulled into Yoga Vashishta, but I am still in Shravana Manana stage myself, though I am studying it. I am still listening and I am still learning the basic texts as well. So you could start there, and then, as you feel comfortable, you can move further. This is about integrating Vedanta. Let's move into Ayurveda. I'll keep it simple. I see I've talked quite a lot. Time is running. So I'm not a Ayurvedic academician, right? I've studied Ayurveda as a yoga teacher. I'm not an Ayurvedic practitioner. So I'll keep it to what makes sense in a yoga context. So the two main concepts in Ayurveda one needs to be aware of is what is called as doshas. Now, doshas come from your birth, what is called as the prakriti, so your constitution, which is made up of elements. Unlike TCM, Chinese system, we don't have wood, we only have these elements. So the first dosha, when there's a prakriti, which is your constitution, there's a vikruti, which is when it is imbalanced. And when it's imbalanced, it's a dosha. You need to bring it back to balance. So the first dosha is vata, which is made of air and ether. Qualities of air apply to vata, lightness, for example. It's also dry, flighty. Pitta, fire and water. Qualities of fire are evident. It is burning, blazing, hot. Kapha, water and earth, like earth, grounding, cool. So, and one can have combinations, vata, pitta, kapha, and so on as well. Just to be aware of doshas as a basic concept is like the first step. And then to be aware of the seasons, because in Ayurveda, seasons don't map exactly to the English season that we are aware of. There's one more season. So Grishma, summer, Varsha, monsoons, Sharada, early autumn, Hemanta, late autumn, Shishira, winter, and Vasanta, spring. Not just to be aware of the seasons, but to be aware of seasons in your locality. In Bangalore, for example, summer starts immediately after Shivratri. This has been known culturally, right? Come Shivratri, it's going to get hot. But if you look at, online search, what is the period of Grishma, it may be different. So just apply your own judgment, local awareness and judgment, what your grandmothers or family members may have said, to figure out which season is it for you locally. Don't go by the global definitions because they may not 100% match. So once you're aware of these two concepts, how do you integrate that? If you want to know your own dosha, there are a lot of assessments online. You can, go ahead and do it and get it, uh, or work with a practitioner to understand a little bit. I would suggest that you think of it like Vedanta. This is sort of like the bottom, right? Knowing ourselves at the Annamaya level. So I would suggest take this also as a study of yourself to understand. I am still working on that myself. To understand yourself as a process. It's not just by doing an assessment that you get it. It's not written in stone. Each of us have our own variations for whatever reasons, based on genetics, season, life story, life history, trauma, other things. So start on that process with some aid, but look at it as something that you need to do yourself, not that somebody will tell you what to do. The way Ayurveda addresses, which is good for yoga practitioners to know, is through foods, herbs, and oils. So, based on the dosha, you need to modify the food. Of course, we don't necessarily advise on food as yoga teachers, right, to students, unless one does that as a nutritionist on the side. We may give general guidelines, but we don't really go in detail into it. So, it's for your own self, understand your own body, and consume food that are palatable to you and your constitution. That is sort of, you need to figure that out. And exercise also as per dosha. So meaning if someone who has a vata tendency, you don't want to get them to do a lot of movement because that is only going to aggravate the vata. They need to do more grounding, not more movement, but more grounding and perhaps even slowing down. Someone who's a kapha would need more movement because they need to be stimulated. Otherwise, kapha is stagnant, wants to stay. So you need to, once you get familiar with your own body, start with yourself. And when you understand, you are able to bring it to your practice to be able to teach your students accordingly. Because if we do in the wrong teaching to the wrong, dosha, then it might have repercussions. I personally have experienced this, especially when you do pranayamas, advanced pranayamas, you have to be very, very careful with breath holds, retention, with bandhas. A lot of the schools teach bandhas and pranayamas very sort of integrated into their practice. But with my own experience, I would say tread with caution and look up what works for a dosha, what doesn't. Stay away from, especially vata, because vata is also connected to prana in the pranamaya kosha. It is very dynamic and it can be changed very, very quickly with wrong application. So that is what I would caution teachers and practitioners against. Oils suiting to your own body and your locality and season, one needs to choose. Coconut, for example, is cooling. Even oils have the same, vata, pitta, kapha, stimulating, aggravating qualities, what is called as cooling and heating in Ayurveda. For example, sesame oil is not native to Karnataka. I've never used sesame oil in my life until I married a Tamil person. We always used coconut oil. So coconut oil is local. It suits my prakriti and it's also available. We grow coconuts in our own farms, for example. So apply that distinction of local, seasonal, and prakriti, and then use things. Don't pick up things because a lot of reels are going on that it's good for health. It may not suit everybody. Herbs, they are similar to oils and food. Herbs also suit certain prakritis and have certain qualities. They can enhance certain things, like certain herbs like dry ginger can stimulate your Agni. Some can be mind stimulating. So if it's a Vata person, you don't want to give them mind stimulating herbs. They want more calming. If it's a Kapha person, they may need mind stimulating. So just be aware. I've listed this. This is from Dr. David Frawley. Dr. David Frawley has a wonderful book on herbs If anybody's in Bangalore wants to borrow, I have a book, I'm happy to lend it to you. So educate yourself before you start experimenting with your own body or suggesting it to others. In terms of rituals, Ayurveda is also about rituals, which one needs to do on a daily basis or a seasonal basis. So I'll touch briefly upon that because this is also a way to integrate that as yoga practitioners. Some of these may already be very familiar to you guys because it's also taught in the ashram setup when you do your TTCs, for example, like Jalneti and tongue scraping. On top of that, Ayurveda also says Abhyanga is good before Vyayama, before exercise. These old Gardi manes or these gymkhanas, people would oil themselves before they did the exercise and then they would have a bath, right? So that is recommended in Ayurveda to do Abhyanga. If not before exercise, at least before bath, if you can do a self Abhyanga or get massages if you're able to afford that, is highly recommended with the oil that suits you. And eating as per your Agni is very important in Ayurveda. If you've ever lit a bonfire, or if you lived in the West and had a chimney where you had to tend to the fire yourself, the wooden one, the traditional one, you would know that you can't just put a whole lot of wood log, the fire would get extinguished, right? Or you can't like tweak it too much, then it will just suddenly start blazing and becomes dangerous. So our Agni, our digestive fire is exactly like that. If you put a lot of food, it's going to get extinguished, perhaps become manda a little bit. Or if you do something weird with it and feed it things that it doesn't suit, it may just become blazing, especially for pitta types in summer. So one needs to be aware of it and eat according to it. If you look at it, look at the sun as the guidance. It's the highest at noon. So you need to eat well at noon, a good lunch as per Ayurveda, a warm breakfast, lighter than lunch, but balanced, and a good dinner, lighter than lunch, but balanced, along with the sun. So around sunset is what is recommended in Ayurveda, and sleeping as per the sun as well. So not sleeping too late and eating too late. This, all of us are perhaps familiar with it. This is also what Ayurveda teaches on a daily basis at dinacharya, things that one needs to do on a daily basis. Then there's ritucharya, because when seasons change, our bodily needs also change because certain doshas are more active in certain seasons, like pitta in summer, vata in monsoons and winter, and kapha in winter and so on. So we need to understand how a body changes in our culture. Our culture is so rich. For example, in Karnataka, come January in Sankranti, we would eat ellu bellam, sesame seeds and jaggery, because you need that heat. And come Ugadi, we would eat bevu bella, which is bitter, because pitta is high, bitterness brings down the pitta, right? So these were, and in sometime around November, when the humidity starts to go down, for Deepavali, we would always have an oil bath. All of us remember, at least the 80s, 90s kids will remember, you were made to put oil and sit in the sun for some time before you were given a bath as a child, right? So that is part of the Deepavali tradition everywhere. So our culture was already following this Ritucharya in a way. So just go deeper into that, understand your own body and adapt to the seasons. And also in certain seasons, you need to adapt your teaching as well. In summer, for example, it's already very hot. You don't want to do a lot of heating practices, no breath holds in pranayama, for example. Surya Namaskaras, maybe some people are able to handle, many people will not be able to handle because it's just too hot in summer. So one needs to adjust the teaching as well accordingly in the seasons. That is the Ritucharya part. Okay, so that is the end of my presentation. Sorry that it took a long time along with that technical thing about sharing. I see we have only a few minutes left. I hope we can take some questions, and let me stop sharing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sahana. That was simple. And such a comprehensive introduction to the world of Vedanta and Ayurveda. And I hope this helps everybody here today boost your practice and help your students more holistically, especially because there's a perception of yoga classes being so asana centric, and there is a curiosity among teachers as to how to help students retain spiritual progress as a pillar of yoga classes. I know, Sana, we were speaking about this before the session today. And so all the practices that you've laid out, Viveka, Vichara, Vedantic meditation, which we will do in the end, as well as the Ayurvedic practices, are hopefully something that everybody can draw on in case you're not already. So we'll open it out to questions now. Please feel free to put your questions on the chat. We have one already from our president, Samya. Samya says, you present the material in a very scientific yet simple manner. What do you feel is the purpose of science in spirituality?
Okay, so there's a distinction between science and scientific method, because science keeps changing or evolving as new things are found out. The relevance of scientific method is to understand the patterns, both internally and in the universe, right? There is a verse, Yatha Brahmande Tata Pinde, Yatha Pinde Tata Brahmande. So as is the macrocosm, so is the microcosm, as is the microcosm, so is the microcosm. So when we understand the patterns of the universe, we also understand ourselves a bit more. So applying the scientific method, I think, has a lot of value in it to help us understand the patterns in more of an objective studied manner, because science is doing it more objectively. The Vedantic practice is more for us to subjectively experience who we are internally, our inner real true state. Yeah, I hope that answers your question, Soumya, or were you looking for something else?
Sure thing, wonderful. And I think that was important to explore, especially because even when we speak in forums like this, we look at Vedanta, or we look at these disciplines and say, oh, but now science is also saying this. And so what is the connection really, and how can we use one as a tool for the other, becomes a very important answer for all of us to have ourselves as yoga teachers and practitioners. We've got another one coming in from Medha. Can you tell us where to begin as people who are just beginning the study of philosophy and Vedanta?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana process that I talked about, I recommend the Shravana process. First, start listening to discourses by others, attending satsangas of people who are, there's another person called Jignasu, I think he's from Yesvyasa. He's also available on YouTube. His discourse is also very good. He's written a book as well. So listening to, I would call those as satsanga, even if we do it digitally, because these days everything is digital. So starting there, I would say, is the first step for beginners.
Thank you. And we have another one. Thank you for the wonderful talk, Sahana. It was easy to understand. I'm wondering, with drastic weather changes, how well do the rituals in terms of eating relate? Don't they have to change accordingly?
It's a great question, Shubhayale. I myself have been wondering about it, given the, one day it's cool and rainy, and like a Vata, Kapha thing in Bangalore. Next day it's fully hot, already 33 degrees back. I'm like, what's happening? So we just need to understand our bodies and not think of these as guidelines. What Ayurveda gives as guidelines, because, it was for a time which was very different from our times and different lifestyles and so on. So take those as guidelines and look at what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And that takes some understanding of your own self and sincerely studying your own body. Do that and go with that. If you try, it's always an experiment. This is where the scientific method comes in place. I myself also have to do it and try and say, okay, does this work? I'm like, oh no, this aggravated some part of me. It doesn't suit me. Okay, I can't do this. I need to change it. So that's the only way. You have to constantly do this and change this based on how you feel. Understanding what is the feeling is take some awareness. Yoga helps a lot there, because you become more aware of your body and your mind when you start doing yoga practices. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Sahana. If there are any further questions, folks, please feel free to leave them on the chat. People have been very keen on the Vedantic meditation. So if it's okay with you, there's one more question, and then after that, if it's okay with you, we will move on to the meditation practice. We do have the session on till 6 p.m. And so we'll move on to the meditation practice. And at the end of this practice, we will also launch a poll so that we can hear from you on other things that you want to learn about and hear about. So quickly, just the last couple of questions. Can we include this in curriculum in our primary school compulsorily? Your thoughts on that from Shubhashri?
It's a great idea. Perhaps Soumya, who's a scholar and doing PhD, has some insight into it because she may know much more about the education system and the influence of what BHU has on it. I don't know at at an individual practitioner teacher level. Soumya, do you know anything about it? If there's plans from Ayush to.
Oh, no, actually, then maybe I can lean on somebody who's a professor here at BHU, Suresh Nair, and if he has any thoughts on whether Ayush Ministry or the Education Ministry has an idea to implement Ayurveda and yoga and Vedanta together into school curriculum. Suresh, I don't know if you're able to speak. But I have not heard of anything myself.
Sorry, unfortunately, I have no idea. We have a course, yoga course in the university.
But what about at the primary school level?
Not exactly. But we have a Krishnamurti Foundations. We have some yoga programs in the schools.
Yeah.
In Banaras.
Through the Krishnamurti Foundation. I think this is still largely being done on a private level. I think government has the interest, definitely has the interest right now, and we'll see about how the elections change the administration, the leadership of the country, but change or maintain either way. And, I think there's definitely from Prime Minister Modi's perspective and from he has a lot of interest in bringing yoga to everybody, but I think it does take a lot of effort to be able to train the right people, to go into the right areas, into primary schools, into government schools, and be able to provide that accessibility to the youth. And definitely then to integrate Vedantic philosophy and Ayurvedic concepts. I think that takes a whole other level.
Yeah, I know some schools in the West. I know school in German, and because I saw it online, like most people. And a school in UK is teaching Sanskrit and the concepts from our Shastras. So some Western schools are doing it. Maybe, as Soumya said, there are private schools, I'm sure, are doing it also.
There are schools even in Bangalore that are following a yogic background or a yogic philosophy and trying to implement. There are several schools in Bangalore itself, and I'm sure across the country there are, but those are a one-off basis. It's not on a large scale.
Yeah.
Thank you, Soumya and Sahana, for that. Last couple questions in the interest of time, and then we will do the meditation. This one's interesting from Anjana. Why is that we are separated by distance, borders, walls, etc., but we do perceive the same things like trees, like Brahmans, duality? Any thoughts on?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of the things that the reason why we need to be aware of our raga, dvesha, bhaya, the likes, dislikes, samskaras, is because all of us who are yoga nidra teachers and practitioners know the concept of sankalpa, right? Sankalpa is basically conceptualizing. It's something deeper which comes from your subconscious. It's not that you conceptualize, now I'll see a tiger and you'll see a tiger. It's not that. It is something that latently is conceptualizing what you're perceiving and experiencing in life. So that is where the raga, dvesha, bhayas become relevant for us to not conceptualize, have sankalpas that are not serving us. So the collective sankalpa, there is something called a totality mind, Virat or Brahma. So there is something called a collective conceptualization, right? In this universe, our universe, our solar system, exists in a certain way. There are certain planets, there is sun, we have earth, we have flora, fauna, species, all that. So this is the totality mind, the conceptualization of this creativity of Brahman. Ultimately, it is Brahman. Brahma is also Brahman, right? Brahma is not a separate identity or a deity that is outside of Brahman. There's no separateness there. So a part of the larger universe existence conceptualizes a certain universe, which is our universe with our solar system, Earth as the planet, Sun as the star, and so on. So that is why we do see common things, right? We are not mad when we see a common tree and another person sees the same. It's not because we're hallucinating or mass hallucination. It's that there is a conceptualization at a higher level, the collective mind, Virat or Brahma.
Fantastic.
Finally,
Finally,
before we go forward, can I just ask, Salika, you're on this call from an ISKCON perspective, and I'd like to go back to the previous question about curriculum in the schools. Do ISKCON schools that are based on the ISKCON philosophy or the ISKCON tradition, do they integrate yoga, Ayurveda, Vedanta philosophy, or is it more, do you have more bhakti involved?
Thank you for the question. The ISKCON educational curriculum focuses mainly on bhakti, basically. There is recognition of all that because bhakti is not an isolation.
Yes.
Education. It in one way or the other connects other aspects of the Vedanta philosophy, but the focus is on Bhakti Yoga, while other aspects are silent, but not completely exclusive of the teachings.
Okay.
In other words, there is teachings of all of these aspects of other areas of Vedic thoughts, but focus is on Bhakti.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you, Sahana and Meghna, for allowing me to interrupt.
No.
And I think people are curious to know, Sahana, how do you teach integrative yoga, and how can one learn from you?
Okay. I teach the regular yoga practices. I teach pranayama, meditation, yoga nidra, asanas only in person, not online. So I integrate these concepts in those yoga programs that I run. I don't do anything separate outside of that. I recommend, to follow the Shravana process to begin with. Seek out the acharyas, teachers, the scholars. They're available online to start there. If you're interested to attend my programs, I'm very happy to have anybody. So you're welcome to join as well.
We will share details in our follow-up email after this. But over to you now. We'll move on to the Vedantic meditation, and we'll conclude with the poll at the end. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. All right. So those of you are still sticking around, I'd like to take you through a meditation. It's a little something that I have put together. I call this as the Panchakoshas meditation, just for us to experience the different koshas individually with awareness. The reason I call it Vedantic meditation is to bring in that aspect of the real I. That is where it perhaps differs from other meditations. Okay, so I'd like to invite you all to just relax wherever you're seated, making sure you are comfortable with your back supported, with your feet firmly on the ground, with your palms comfortably in your lap. Gently closing your eyes, checking in with yourselves, how you're feeling right now in this moment. Check in with your breath, just to observe and notice how you're breathing without judging or altering your breath. And just make a mental resolve to not move throughout this meditation, to be present throughout this meditation. Starting with the Annamaya Kosha, I'd like to invite you to scan your body as if you're looking at yourself in a mirror. Starting with your toes, if you're observing yourself seated in a mirror right now, just noticing your toes, your feet, just going up through the legs, your knees, your thighs. The hips. Feeling the support your limbs offer you. Scanning up through your back, shoulders, arms, your torso. How well the torso is supporting you right now. Moving up to your neck, your head, and your face. Scanning your entire body from your toes to the head and from the head to your toes. Observing your body as if you're observing someone else. Knowing that you are the witness, the observer, or the awareness of your body. You're not your body. The body made up of food will return to earth someday. Just accepting the body as it is. And accepting that it is not you. Now, bring your awareness to your breath, your natural breath. Observing your breath as you inhale from your nose all the way down to your spine. Exhaling from the spine all the way back to the nose. Just following the natural rhythm of your breath through the inhalation and exhalation. As you observe your inhalation and exhalation, observe also the gap between the inhalation and exhalation. A slight pause after you inhale and a slight pause after you exhale. Know that the awareness exists even when you're not breathing, in the pause between inhalation and exhalation. You are not your prana. You are the awareness of the movement of your breath. And become aware of your thoughts and feelings or any perceptions that may arise spontaneously. Just observing as they occur without trying to change. No thoughts occur. You may think of what you did before you came into the session today, just mentally going through the day, and the thoughts will start to occur. And ask yourself, who is aware of these thoughts? What if your thoughts were controlled? What would be left? It is your awareness. You're not your mind, the manomaya. Now start to ask yourself, who is aware of the thoughts and feelings or perceptions? Knowing that you're not your thoughts, not your feelings, you're not your perceptions. You're not made up of your thoughts and feelings and perceptions. The thoughts, feelings, and perceptions are made up of awareness. You're the awareness that is aware of thoughts, feelings, and perceptions. Let whatever thoughts or experiences come, come. Let whatever thoughts or experiences go, go. You, the awareness, stays the same. Now bring your awareness to your heart center, mentally chanting, I am, a non-verbal mental chanting of I am, focusing on your heart center. Who is the I in the I am? If pleasant feelings arise, let them arise, let them go. You, the awareness, stays the same. You're not even the Anandamaya Kosha. Gently come back to your breath. Come back to your physical body, feeling the physicalness of your body, knowing you're seated in your room, in this physical body, in this lifetime. We'll end the practice with 3 Om chants, sending our love and thanks to the universe. So bring your palms together at the heart center. Inhaling all together. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om. Hari Om. Finish off by rubbing your palms together to generate some warmth. And cup your eyes gently to spread the warmth to your eyes and your face. And open your eyes with a big smile.
Thank you so much, Sahana, for that meditation. Do not want to diminish the effects of that. So we let all the participants carry on with their Saturdays with that feeling of serenity. And there is a poll that we're going to be shooting out. Please do share your ideas with us on what you'd like to hear. We'd love to hear from you. We're doing these for you. And if you'd like to be part of the Yoga Council, please do reach out to us. Once again, Sahana Ravindranath, thank you so much. And have a wonderful Saturday, everyone.
Thank you very much to all the participants. Thank you, Meghana, and thank you, Sahana.